Danny, speaking of trust, do you trust Jimmy Garoppolo? Because last night we all watched Raiders-Packers. Big win for the Raiders, Danny G.
Dude, we called it. We called it.
Must win. In a room alone with my girlfriend? Because no.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Do you trust Jimmy Garoppolo with your wife?
Definitely. No, absolutely not.
Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, this team, we said last night was a must-win, and we said that's sort of serious because now, instead of 1-4, you're sitting at 2-3.
Danny called it an early season do or die.
Yeah, and because now you're 2-3, and 4 of your next 5 games are against both New York football teams, which aren't very good, Jets and Giants, and you play the Bears and the Broncos in the upcoming weeks, and you have a game against the Lions. So 4 of your next 5 games are winnable. So the Raiders right now are in a position where, in an AFC where that bottom of the wild card world is going to be very tight, the Raiders have to win this month. This is like win time for the Raiders. They're not playing the Chiefs. They're not playing the Chargers. They're not playing... All their tougher games are later. But I watched Jimmy G last night, and I think what it did inadvertently made me realize Brock Purdy doesn't make mistakes. Because I saw moments where I was like, oh, that's right, Jimmy gets flustered in the pocket sometimes. Oh, once a game, he's definitely going to give you one ill-advised pass that you hope doesn't get picked.
Notice it's like catching up with your ex-wife or girlfriend and realizing how much better the new one is.
Yeah, Brock's looking pretty sweet right now. But then again, we haven't been with Brock very long. But I did notice that Garoppolo's got that winning vibe about him. But, Danny, have you noticed how he is always prone for one bad decision?
Yeah.
And there's times where you're like, dude, get rid of the ball, throw it away. And he lets the pocket collapse, and it becomes like a 2nd and 16. And you're like, dude, just freaking get rid of the ball.
Exactly. Throw it out of bounds. He'll take a couple of bad sacks and throw one Phillip Rivers-like interception in each game.
Well,
he throws it right to the defender.
Those were the intangibles that we talked about that Brock Purdy seems to have a full grasp on. And Rich keeps posing this question of how come nobody's talking about Brock Purdy's intangibles? It's like, well, we're talking about it. We are talking about it. And it was noticeable when you see Garoppolo making some of those mistakes. You know, if you're new to our show, Rich is a 49ers guy, so he got to witness all of this.
And Danny, I'm sure you feel that way when you watch Derek Carr for the Saints. You're like, you remember his style. You remember, it might be a different system or scheme, but you remember the player when he was on your team. And watching Jimmy Garoppolo last night reminded me, like, likable guy, winner, finds a way to get it done, but along the way, the pocket collapses and he takes unnecessary sacks, and he occasionally will throw an ill-advised pass that you hope to get away with.
The difference between the two for me so far has been Jimmy G has better body language after he makes a mistake. I think Derek Carr kind of crumbles, especially late game mistakes.
I think that matters a lot.
Yeah,
that's leadership, man. That's leadership. Jimmy G makes the team think, don't worry, we got this. He's a good leader. And I think Derek Carr at times did look like...
He gets in his own head and he gets a little pouty. And so I think that watching him, Jimmy G, throw that late interception last night, God, I have to apologize to my wifey. I was cursing like a truck driver that
wasn't Baby Co's first word is the F word?
I knew it was bad when she got up and removed him out of his little swing.
Oh man, he's throwing stuff, Danny G.
That last interception really just drove me nuts. And when the Raiders were able to pick off Jordan Love a second time, they wasted that. They didn't get any points out of it. And then I was going nuts with that, too. There was a lot of mistakes in that game. It was a sloppy game, but as I pointed out yesterday, the Raiders' defense the past few weeks has looked decent, especially in the second half, keeping teams to scores within the 20s and not getting blown out and keeping things close. But it's the Raiders' offense all of a sudden that couldn't get going until the fourth quarter of games.
But again, for as much of a must-win as it was for the Raiders, the flip side of the story is the writing on the wall for Jordan Love. Like, are we starting to see that maybe he isn't the guy? You know, that is the other side of the story. Like, we're now seeing a lot of tape on this dude.
And I think it's too early to say that.
It's definitely too early, but hey, listen.
That's going to be talked about as well, just not as much on this show because we're always hyping on the Raiders because that's Danny G's team. And as a result, I'm tuned in onto the Raiders now. So, it was a must-win, and I was happy for you at the end of that game when they got that pick.
Dude, to get 3 interceptions. I don't think a Raiders defense has seen 3 interceptions for years. I'll have to look that up, but maybe a couple in a game, but to get 3 interceptions in a game, that was a big deal for that defense.
I did I know a lot of people love to do the in-game player prop bets. I know people don't care about other people's bets, but I got to tell you, I was like 10 yards shy of a pretty good one last night. It was like one of those $20 wins, like $400. It was Garoppolo a touchdown, check. It was Crosby a sack. He got one late in the game. I was like, yes!
Man, he was all over the place.
It was like over 60 yards for your boy Jacobs. That just got there. I missed the Devontae Adams yards. I needed like 70, and he only put up, like 40 or 50. It was all about Jacoby Myers. It was all about Jacoby Myers, and we talked about how he is Jimmy G's safety, like his security blanket, his safety net. He loves that Jacoby Myers pass.
When you're done talking about your in-game prop bets, why don't you tell us about what your kids are going to be for Halloween while you're at it?
Another thing no one wants to hear.
Yeah. You want to show us some screenshots?
You hear this guy?
I'm just saying.
No, it is true. But a lot of people probably like, oh, Devontae came up short on a lot of fantasy people's lineups last night.
Oh, for sure.
Now, I'm not making the same analogy I did yesterday with the Falcons, where I said, the Falcons are quite possibly the most average team in the NFL, where they're not bad enough to revamp, but they're not good enough to win.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the Packers are that, but I think a lot of times, and you see it with the Patriots, you saw it with the Cubs for a while in baseball, when you had a core of players that were the face of your franchise, good or bad, and then they all sort of leave, I feel like even the fan base is like, who are we? Like when the Cubs were like, later Rizzo, later Chris Bryant, you
got to find your identity.
Yeah, and then you're like, hey,
who are the leaders? Who's going to step up? Who do we trust?
Later Tom Brady, later, all those familiar faces, the Welkers and Gronks of the world. When a team has an identity for a long time, it's like after the Yankees said farewell to Jeter and he retired.
The core four.
The core four hung it up. There was a year where it's like, who should Didi Gregorius? Even if he's good, it's like, it's not Derek Jeter at shortstop. I think the Packers right now are coming off of a decade plus of Aaron Rodgers, Clay Matthews, Randall Cobb. I know some of these guys are retired and gone, but we're talking about, like, when you picture the Packers, there was a 10-year period where they had maybe a handful of the same all-star Pro Bowlers.
They had an identity.
And now you're like, who? All right, Dylan and Jordan Love, and who's on that? Like, you're sort of reassessing, like, who are the Packers right now?
Yeah,
because they're not the Packers we remember. You're not the, even like Lazard and Cobb were gone. They followed Aaron to the Jets. So I think the Packers right now are hard to read because I don't even know if we know who they are.
What's their identity? What's their style? Who are the real weapons on that team? Yeah, still figuring that out.
Still a work in progress.
Yeah.
So, hey, a fun game to watch. Anytime a game at least comes down to the fourth quarter, it's fun on a Monday night.
Props again.
My kids are saying, Dad, let's play
Raiders.
Like, when your my kids took a pickup where, like, you ever had dated an annoying girl where your kids
Yes. No, I'm just kidding.
When it's like the end, like they want your attention at a pivotal moment of something.
Yeah,
when it's 4th and 1.
They're pulling on your pant leg. It's 4th and 1.
It was the fourth quarter. And I even told my wife, she's a sports fan. She gets it. But it was the fourth quarter, like maybe 2 minutes left, and the 2-minute warning hit. My kid's like, Dad, we're waiting for you to play Mario Kart before bed. I'm like, Sarah, calm him down for 2 minutes. Give him a cupcake or something. Give him a
cupcake.
I don't know. Tell him to take a.
That calms me down.
Give them their Flintstone vitamins.
Spoonful of Benadryl.
Yeah, get some melatonin for these little suckers. Jeez. But I'm thinking to myself, that's like the most consistent thing for a kid or a girlfriend to do. 2 minutes left in the game, 9th inning, 8th inning.
Occupy the kids?
Like, just come on. Let the game finish off.
I mean, in Sarah's defense, she's a Packers fan, so maybe she wanted to watch. She's such a Packers fan, she married a cheesehead.